Our next testifier is Carole Laible, president of Domini Social Investments. Thank you.
Well, I guess it's good afternoon now. My name is Carole Laible. I'm the Chief Executive Officer at Domini Social Investments. Thank you for the opportunity to provide comment in support of the Fossil Fuel Divestment Act. In Domini's opinion, divestment of fossil fuels by the New York State Common Retirement Fund would be an important step towards addressing the concerns about the future financial viability of the fossil fuel industry, and would make a strong statement about the need for coordinated action to reduce the potential of widespread economic disruption. Domini Social Investments is an SEC-registered investment advisor specializing exclusively in responsible investing. We manage a family of global mutual funds with $1.5 billion in assets under management. We apply social, environmental, and governance standards to all of our investments, believing that they help identify opportunities to provide strong financial returns while also helping to create a more just and stable economic system. For many years, Domini has incorporated concerns about the environmental risks of fossil fuel production into our investment decisions. Since our inception in 1991, we have never held coal mining companies. In the past, we have approved few integrated oil companies, and we now exclude all owners and producers of oil, natural gas, and coal reserves from our funds. Today, we would like to share with you some of our views on the unique nature of the threat of climate change and why we believe that divestment is an appropriate response by fiduciaries. In doing so, we will comment on the financial risks of continued investment in fossil fuel, the moral imperative for action on climate change, and the effectiveness of divestment as a tool to prompt action. The increasing reality of climate change attributable to the burning of fossil fuel and the speed at which that reality is coming upon us has been well documented. The level of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere is increasing rapidly and has grown from 315 parts per million in 1960 to 402 as of January 2016. Moreover, the annual growth rate of carbon dioxide concentration in the atmosphere is increasing, from approximately 1% in the 1960s to approximately 2% since 2010. In addition, because the oceans absorb carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, their chemical makeup is also altering. The oceans absorb 24 million metric tons of carbon dioxide each day. This has resulted in an overall 26% increase in the acidity of their waters since pre-industrial time. Acidification of the oceans is currently increasing at 10 times the rate of any period of time in the past 55 million years. Scientists believe that the increasing level of carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gas emissions in the atmosphere are resulting in the warming of the Earth. 7 of the 10 warmest years on record have occurred since 1998. Globally, 2015 was the warmest year on record. According to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, these changes are due to human activity, and in large part due to the burning of fossil fuel. These climate change effects have put the future of the fossil fuel industry at risk. With increasing calls for keeping global temperature increase at less than 2 degrees Celsius and the commitments by 196 nations at the COP21 meetings in Paris to reduce their carbon emissions as soon as possible, the shift away from fossil fuels is underway. Consequently, a significant portion of the world's fossil fuel reserves may become unburnable. That is to say, stranded assets. Already, financial markets are anticipating this transition, and the stocks of coal companies have suffered accordingly. The Dow Jones Coal Index dropped 36.5% in 2015 and 75% in the last 5 years. As discussed by both Toby and Tom, the MSCI All-Country World Index, which excluded oil and gas companies, has outperformed the index which included the full complement of fossil fuel companies. For these reasons, fiduciaries should consider the implication of their fossil fuel investment. It cannot be considered a violation of fiduciary duty to sell shares of companies whose assets are believed to be significantly impaired. As the UN Environment Program Financial Initiative recently observed, failing to consider long-term investment value drivers, which include environmental, social, and governance issues in investment practice, is a failure of fiduciary duty. And the CFA Institute's recent study on the integration of these factors into the investment process concluded that systematically considering these issues will likely lead to more complete investment analyses and better informed decisions. Climate change is the ultimate systemic risk. Its potential impacts will be global and will be disproportionately inflicted on the most vulnerable members of our civilization. Its profound disruption will result in the indiscriminate extinction of species. Ethicists have argued that humans do not have the moral right to cause massive disruption in the global ecosystems that put other species at the risk of extinction. As global warming and acidification of the oceans produce winners and losers, those who are most vulnerable to the changes brought on by climate change will be those who have contributed to it the least. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change points out that people who are socially, economically, culturally, politically, institutionally, or otherwise marginalized are especially vulnerable to climate change and also to some adaptation and mitigation responses. Sociologist C. Wright Mills believed that we are not destined by inevitable fate, but rather by individual actions. And although each of these actions may seem of small consequence, in total, they result in a way that no man intended. It is this unintended consequence that divestment seeks to prevent. In addition, one must consider Mill's philosophy that as the circle of those who decide is narrowed, and as the means of decisions are centralized and the consequence of decisions become enormous, then the course of great events often rests upon the decisions of determinable circles. It is with this lens that we, asset owners and managers, must acknowledge that we are very much a part of this determinable circle. We have the power to influence the course of these great events and must uphold our responsibility to prevent catastrophic damage to our world. Among the most powerful arguments for the effectiveness of the divestment campaign is the promotion of public debate and the resulting influence on public policy. This was particularly true in the South Africa divestment campaign of the 70s and 80s. The short-term goal was to improve corporate race relations under apartheid, but its ultimate goal was the orderly dismantling of the apartheid legal system itself. The debates that this divestment provoked were particularly high profile, receiving wide press coverage, and decisions to divest contributed to the general global pressure upon the South African government to reform. It is the role of orderly debate that leads to change. despite entrenched interest or longstanding opposition. That is one of divestment's greatest virtues. Investors are not simply passive actors in our financial system. Each investment decision plays a critical capital allocation role, and we should be mindful of their implications. We are future makers, and we should invest accordingly. New York State has been a leader in shareholder engagement for decades. It recognizes that it can and should exercise significant influence. The act before us today would allow the state to build an impressive record of leadership in the following manner. 1, it would permit the state to raise its voice and express an even stronger commitment to mitigating the risks of climate change, one of the most difficult issues of our time. 2, it should help shield the common retirement fund that the risk of a substantial portion of fossil fuel company reserves will become stranded. And 3, the Act's time frame requiring divestment by 2020 provides the state with the opportunity to continue a program of intensive engagement with oil and gas companies to conform their business strategies to a 2°C mandate. In conclusion, we consider the adoption of the Fossil Fuel Divestment Act to be crucial and urgent. Thank you.
And we didn't let you introduce your colleague before, so would you do so?
I
I'm
will
sorry.
let him introduce himself.
Sure.
He's never shy for words.
No. Hi, I'm Adam Kanzer. I'm a managing director, and I direct our corporate engagement and public policy work at Domini.
Thank you both very much. Assembly member, senator? Right, I think we're good. Thank you, and again, we apologize. It's amazing how quickly a time span moves along.